I'm just so glad that the election of 2020 is finally over and Joe Biden has won handedly. And there won't be any attempts by Republicans to discredit mail in ballots, and Donald Trump will slowly fade away from the public eye. Finally, we have the conclusion to this horrible era in politics. Nothing will ever come back to bite us in the butt. We won. We crushed him in an electoral landslide. Many are saying that they've never seen anything quite like this.
No, it's really cool. I'm glad politics worked out this way. Now I don't have to get my degree in political science anymore, and I can go back to brunch.
Yes, yes. Nobody cares about politics anymore.
That is, for all of our listeners, we are now transitioning to a film podcast. We're going to talk about movies from now on because politics is over.
We're going to be talking about Call Her Daddy now. I'm a Call Her Daddy guy. That's my favorite podcast now.
I don't know that podcast. But
It's Barstool.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Anyway, hello all. This is The Tempest, and we are back with our post-election rundown.
Is it our post-election rundown? We don't know a winner yet.
Yeah, I guess we shouldn't say post-election. I should say middle election, current election. We've actually been live streaming since election night itself. 48 hours straight, just constant loop. Streaming.
Yes. In the middle of the stream, I was ritualistically castrated, and my
I don't know where that was going, but okay. Anyway, yeah. So today is I should
Thursday.
Yeah, that's right. We are Thursday, November 5th at 7:00. So by the time you're listening to this, God knows where we'll be election-wise. But in the meantime, we have some thoughts that you might be interested in regarding this election and how things have shaped up so far, and trends that we're starting to realize and what they may say for the future. Is that right, Sam?
Yeah, sure. We were just watching Donald Trump's podcast, or his press conference, and it kind of laughed because it was kind of boring. It was very low energy. It was very, frankly, it was pathetic. He was talking about himself a lot. He was talking about how awesome and how handedly he won Florida and Ohio by landslides.
Yeah. The interesting thing I noticed, though, was in a lot of the swing states, he was not claiming victory, like Michigan and Wisconsin and Arizona, those three mostly, which have already been called. He was saying narrow margin, but he never actually claimed that he won any of those states, which really just leaves Nevada.
Yeah,
he
said he won on November 3rd that night, and he hasn't said anything since.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess we should say the state of the electoral map right now is what it's...
Every state's called and counted for except for Nevada, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and North Carolina.
Yeah, and so that leaves Joe Biden at 264, correct?
Yeah.
He is at 264, with Nevada leaning heavily Democrat. And so we're thinking in the next few days, or maybe even hours at this point, we're going to hear Nevada called, and those 6 points are going to go for Biden, and that's going to cement his majority, and he will ultimately win, or at least that's how we're expecting things to go, not including court cases and whatnot. So even though things are still contested, at this point, we are working under the assumption, or at least we have the premise, that Joe Biden will be the next president. Things could change. God knows it goes to the Supreme Court. Even then, who knows what the Supreme Court's going to do. But for the sake of this podcast, we would like to assume that Joe Biden will be the next president.
Yes. The Biden team has reached out to me several times and asked me to participate in the legal trials that will commence. And so I have rejected their demands. I am waiting to hear what Alan Dershowitz thinks before I tie myself to any lengthy legal battle.
Yeah, I think Alan Dershowitz has actually spoken on this before. I think he is leaning towards a Biden victory as well. He is saying if it goes to the courts will probably not make a decision, go with like lower court decisions, and of course like the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, all that good stuff. But all in all, it'll end up going count the ballots, and it'll be for Biden. Because at this point, and people have kept pointing this out, Trump repeatedly has been saying, stop the count, stop counting, election night's over. at this very moment, if we stopped counting in every single state, called it where it was, Joe Biden would win.
Yes, he would win because he's up in Nevada.
Yeah.
He would have 270 votes exactly. In order to win, Trump would need to win all 4 of the remaining states, and
Exactly.
he might win Georgia. I think he's probably gonna win North Carolina,
Yeah.
and he might even win Pennsylvania. Who knows? But he's definitely not gonna win Nevada unless there's an act of God. And I guess if Dershowitz is calling it, that's the best trial lawyer in the country.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess it's a pretty open and shut case that Biden would win the court battles. But then again, that's not a definitive yes,
Yeah.
because as you know, there have been a lot of changes to the Supreme Court lately that now calls it into question, and the Bush crime family, who I will refer to as the Bush crime family throughout the length of this. Get it. There's a fly in the studio.
I think I got it. Yeah, I think we're good.
All right. There was a fly in our studio, in the Alan Dershowitz studio. But we're all good now. What was I talking about?
You're talking about the Bush crime family.
Oh, yes.
Court packing.
I will only refer to them as the Bush crime family throughout the remainder of this podcast. And they stole their 2000 election via Supreme Court mandate. They're Republicans, and right now the Supreme Court is now 6 conservatives and 3 liberals. So it stands to reason that if something like Bush v. Gore happened and we were dealing with Trump v. Biden, then they would side with the conservative president and rule in his favor, whatever the case may be. But I guess that brings up the question, like, essentially what happened in 2000 is that they were recounting counties in Florida, and the Supreme Court said stop counting. And so, but right now, what would they even rule on? Like, Biden is in the lead in Nevada, so if they say stop counting, it's like you said, there would be a victory for Joe Biden.
Exactly. And I've heard people who actually were on the Gore team speak about it so far, and they're saying the point where Joe Biden is right now, he has the high ground. He has the upper hand. If you were a candidate in this race, you would want to be Joe Biden right now, because when it comes down to it, if they call it now, say stop counting, he wins. If they say keep counting, he very well still might win.
Yeah,
and that's the position that Joe Biden is in, is the position that you would want to be in this case scenario. And so that's why I think it's pretty safe to assume that he, electorally, legally, whatever,
he would get 270 exactly, which is pretty pathetic, but I think we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I think that's a disgusting victory. But
yeah, we'll talk about that later. I guess right now we should focus on the legal aspect. Yeah, exactly. Like the Supreme Court, if Trump found a way to get it before them, first of all, it would have to get, they'd have to appeal it so many times, and the Supreme Court would have to decide, yes, we will hear this case, and that's not even, guaranteed. But let's say it does get there. What are they going to rule on? Like, are you going to invalidate the results of Nevada? Are you going to invalidate the results of Wisconsin? Like, they can't. What would they even do? Because it's not like there's going to be an issue of recounts. If you stop recounting, Biden wins. If you continue counting, there's nothing for the Supreme Court really to stick their dirty little fingers in. I don't understand what could come from the legal battle. I mean, essentially, Trump's going to have to overturn the election. He's going to have to somehow disprove that Joe Biden did not win Wisconsin and Michigan, and how exactly would he even go about doing that?
he can't. I hate to say he can't, but I do not think he will. Rather, I just don't see it as a possibility.
He did not kill the fly.
Yeah.
This is good. This is a good bit for the episode.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry. Go ahead.
Anyway, I don't see a world where it's possible, even with his conservative supermajority on the Supreme Court, for him to overturn and invalidate huge sections of ballots. I mean, they called out 2000 for being a nakedly partisan decision by the Supreme Court to install a conservative president of the United States. And that was a decision that just kind of said stop counting the ballots.
Yeah.
That's all they did. They used whatever reasoning. They just said stop counting. To do this, they would have to actively go in and say like, no, these are not valid, or like, not only stop the recount, but actively like take away votes from the count. Or same with like if you kept counting, they would still probably in many cases have to invalidate ballots to actually push Trump over the threshold he needs in a lot of these states. And as disgusting as the Supreme Court is, I despise the Supreme Court. I do not think that they would actually do that. They're a bunch of cowards. They wouldn't make such a partisan decision. I mean, I do not like Chief Justice Roberts. I think that he makes horrible decisions, but he believes in the hype of the Supreme Court. I think he legitimately believes he is in a nonpartisan institution that is meant to uphold the law. I do not see a world where someone who actually bought into the hype of the American Constitution goes in and flips an election like that.
Who appointed Roberts? Was it Bush 1, Bush 2?
I think it was Bush 1.
Okay, so he's pretty old then.
Yeah.
All right. Anyways, yeah, like the only way Trump could win, I guess, is if they threw out all the mail-in ballots, and there's no, example. There's no reason to do that. He keeps saying it's fraudulent, but they can't prove it. Unfortunately.
Yeah. And that's what
unfortunately for him.
That's what he was sort of going off on in his press conference earlier, is just talking about how they keep finding ballots. It's whatever they need. I told all my supporters not to vote by mail. Now they're counting the mail-in ballots, and none of them are my supporters. Gee, I wonder how that happened.
Yeah, who saw this? Who could have predicted this?
Yeah. But I think moving on from that issue, we can say with reasonable confidence, I would say 95% confidence, that Joe Biden will be the next president of the United States.
Yes, but there is one more point I want to make. I actually do want this to go to a legal battle because I think that the Democrats would win, so it wouldn't be like we were endangering the Biden's position. And secondly, if you look at the 2000 election legal battle, the person in charge of the Bush strategy was James Baker, who was an accomplished diplomat and one of the greatest legal minds of his generation, despite being a very, very obviously evil man. I mean, he has the skulls of Nicaraguans in his, garage. That being said, who would Trump send? Trump would send Giuliani. Trump would send just that insane homunculus who would just sweat over the ballots. It would be.
Yeah, I mean.
Get ready. Sorry.
Did you kill it?
No, I didn't kill it.
Oh.
I might have broke her calculator though.
Oh, fuck. Come on. Anyway, that's the thing with his legal team is you would have, like, you hate to see it, but the Bush family, all of the Bush administrations, they had phenomenal lawyers. They were some of the best in the world. But yeah, with Trump, you get what? You get Giuliani.
You get Michael Cohen.
Yeah, have him argue before the Supreme Court.
I would pay money to see Rudy Giuliani versus Michael Avenatti. But those are very dated references.
Yeah, moving forward, I'd like to get back to the sort of the actual election, the actual casting of votes. So we're assuming Biden's going to win, and yes, we can say with reasonable confidence he will win. But that raises the questions of how he did win, what got us here, and looking back at the polls, what went wrong, how did it go wrong, and now that we're starting to see some of the demographic results, what is up with Joe Biden's campaign? What were they thinking? How did they fumble this the way they did?
Right.
How did 2 elections in a row, how did the Democrats blow it this hard?
Let's talk about that because, yes, even though Biden's going to win, worst case scenario, he just wins Nevada and Georgia, North Carolina, and the other one, Pennsylvania. The one I live in, all go red. And again, that might not happen. It probably won't happen. I think it's fair to assume that Pennsylvania will go blue.
Yeah.
But that being said, it's still a very narrow margin. Trump beat Hillary. I think he had 306 votes when it was all said and done.
Yeah.
Biden's going to have somewhere between 270 and 290, somewhere in there. That's really pathetically low. He lost Florida despite spending hundreds of millions of dollars there.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it was insisted that Texas was at play and that Biden could very well flip Texas. I think he did worse than Hillary did in Texas.
No, he didn't do worse
Ah.
than Hillary, but he did do worse than Beto in 2018.
Okay, exactly. Okay, so Texas went more red than it did in 2018. He barely Michigan was very close.
Yep.
Wisconsin was very close.
Yeah, we were told Iowa may have been up for grabs.
Trump got more votes from Wisconsin and Michigan than he did in 2016, even though he lost. Trump's support among white men dropped.
That's the only demographic where it dropped.
Yes, black women's support for Trump doubled. Black men's support for Trump increased.
Yep.
Latinos, oh boy, what the fuck happened there?
Well, the one I showed you earlier was college-educated white women, suburban white women that Biden was aiming for this whole time, like a traditionally Republican demographic. They went from a majority Hillary Clinton to a majority Donald Trump support.
Right. So
over this election.
college-educated white women went for Hillary in 2016. They go for Trump in 2020.
Exactly. Yeah, that's what, and of course this is still developing. We're still getting all of like the demographic results, but the jump was over 5%. It was a 5% jump, which, granted, there's still a pretty wide margin of error given that results are still coming in and we're only a few days after the election. But that is enough to indicate that something went very wrong in the Biden campaign. Something went very wrong with the Democratic Party, and of course we'll talk about the Senate later. Yeah,
That's not to mention all the House seats they lost.
exactly. But something did not click. The polls were wrong about it. The polls had him up 17 points in Wisconsin. That was wrong. That was dead wrong. That was like, how do you miss by 15, 16 points in a poll? There's got to be something either A, wrong with the polling, or B, just wrong with the Democrats.
Right. Okay, let's... First of all my friends telling me that because the polls were wrong, that somehow invalidates the existence of my entire major. I want to politely say that that's not true. That's not true, right, Jack? Political science is still a legitimate field.
No,
we don't do polling classes. I didn't have to go to a class where I learned about how to do polls. You want to know why? Because polls aren't real. Explain why polls aren't real, Mr. Statistician.
Okay, yeah, no. So I've actually done some polling work, and I've worked a lot on my data science skills and like learned how to do these election modelings. It is insane the level of minute detail that goes into it. And of course, what you have to remember with polling is it is exclusively based on past references. So we all know no two elections are the same, but building a poll from scratch to be Trump versus Biden, we're not looking at necessarily even like calling up people all of the time to build these models, but we're looking at 2016 election, we're looking at the 2018 election. And granted, that can be accurate sometimes, but as of right now, we are not in 2018. We are not in 2016. You look at the world around us where we have 10% unemployment. We have a pandemic going on.
It killed over 200,000 people.
Your polling models are not going to be accurate in this scenario. Doesn't matter how much like actual groundwork you do, how many people you interview, any of that sort of thing. Your polls will not be accurate. Now, they took that, and of course, I mean mostly like mainstream media polling outlets, Quinnipiac for one, like Washington Post, all of those different polling outlets with the wider margins. They were using these very outdated models. They were using demographic trends that were proved completely wrong, and it just boiled up to this perfect storm of them seeing a blowout victory for Biden because they were counting voter turnout. And historically, voter turnout, as it increases, that tends to go Democrat. That tends to go liberal. They did not recognize the fact that Trump had boosted turnout for his supporters to a level where more of them were coming out than they did in 2016 and 2018. And they just assumed that support was going straight to Joe Biden. That support was not going to Joe Biden. It was pretty split, almost 50-50. That's why in North Carolina they were projecting a Democratic win, because North Carolina is it's almost 50-50 white African American, so they were assuming with this major boost in turnout, oh, it's the black community in North Carolina. They're going to come out, they're going to vote for Joe Biden. It was not the African American community. It was split between like white and black voters turning out in North Carolina, And of course, that goes as much to Trump and Biden, not to mention that African American votes for Trump were highest of any Republican candidate since Nixon. So it's with all of these sort of like premises of polling, they just kept building on one another in these assumptions that, oh, this has to go towards Biden, or like these factors like turnout among African Americans, general turnout, economic factors, incumbency bonuses, like all of that have these very traditional meanings that they accounted for, but that's not the election we were in. That's not
Right.
what we actually had to look out for. And so that's the funny thing is, most of the major polling outlets were very wrong, but if you look at internal Trump polling and even internal Biden polling, they were only off by a few points in a lot of these states. Where like ABC was projecting blowouts in Michigan, the Biden campaign had it only a few points off. Like they had them up, but not by much. Same with Florida, and like the Trump campaign is, they had very accurate numbers.
What's funny about that? I don't get it. I'm
No one reported it. There was like no reporting. It was just these botched numbers. And of course, every time you hear the Trump campaign say like, "Oh no, we're not actually losing like that," you think, "Oh yeah, right." And you guys
dumb
lie all
old
the time.
Yeah,
They were right.
yeah,
The Trump campaign was right about the polling numbers.
yeah. So, obviously, Jack just explained in a very smart, sophisticated way why polling is crap and it's not real and it's fake news, fake science. Uh, Also, my main thing is most of these polls they call people on the phone and they say, "What do you think of these people?" You're only gonna pick up the phone and answer if you love politics, right? If it's like your thing. Politics has become a thing for people. It's become a sports. Debate night is like the playoffs, and election night is like the Super Bowl. And that's dumb. That's really cringe. It's stupid because we're dealing with people's lives here. But that's beside the point. If you are like a normal guy who votes but also doesn't know all the crap, you're gonna be like, what? Shut up and hang up the phone justifiably.
Yeah, and that's
because
another...
pollsters are fucking little swamp bug men who don't.
Yeah, I'm not saying that Nate Silver should lose his job. I'm just saying that maybe we should sort of not let him talk anymore, not let him have a job anymore.
Yeah, like he is the worst one. He like made this model in 2012 and got it right, and he was sort of became God.
Well,
he like
you mentioned the sort of like sports like fervor in which people root for their team in politics. Nate Silver was a sports guy. He did sports statistics. He moved to politics in 2012.
Yeah.
That is the perfect analogy for how politics have gone since 2012. It's a team sport.
He's fucking turned Super Tuesday into the fucking NFL draft.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. And so, of course, with that, the polls were wrong. Trump swept a lot of these states that looked contested, or even looked like Biden had a chance. And that got a lot of people scared. It got a lot of people worried. And, yeah. I don't know. Those people weren't expecting that on election night. And even though it still looked like Joe Biden had his path to victory, people kept getting 2016 flashbacks. Nobody learned from 2016.
I admit, my jaw hit the floor when they called Florida for him, because I always knew he was going to win Florida. Florida is one of the most cagged states.
Yeah.
But the fact that it was the first one, and, like, if you look at the totals now, obviously it's close. It's a swing state, but, like, Jesus Christ, how fast they called it like that. All those people living there.
That was Miami-Dade County. Joe Biden underperformed with Latinos massively.
Yeah, we should talk about that. All this nerd math stuff, it's alienating women from the podcast. I'm just kidding. Women are great at math. But why did...
I was going to say, one of our listeners is my mom, and she's a math teacher.
Well, there you go. Why did Biden do so bad with non-white people, with gay people, with women, with everyone except white men? Us, honky ass fellas all turned out for big old Joe, and then we're not going to get any credit for that.
That's a very good question.
It's because of
No,
Kanye, right?
it's
Kanye stole all the black vote. That's a kidding.
exactly.
I'm making fun of liberals. I don't really believe that.
So here's the thing. People hate it when Trump says this. They chalk it up to talking points. But pre-pandemic, real African American wages were increasing, like at a rate where in a couple more years they would have actually like met white wages. And that's the thing. It was because of the economic boom. Granted, that was all destroyed in the last few months. But we were on track to have arguably one of the more equitable American economies in the last like couple of decades. It was, granted, it was. I don't like to call it Obama's economy because Trump still ran it for 3 years, but coming off of the recession, we had that continued growth to the point where all corners of like America were actually starting to see benefits. And I think that Trump managed to carry that momentum even through the pandemic to say best jobs market, best economy. Even recently, there was the whole thing where the GDP in the last quarter increased 70%, which of course he says 33% annualized GDP growth, which is not possible. But it's this whole idea that like despite his flaws, he is bringing economy. To the very end, he was beating Joe Biden on economic policy. Joe Biden never had the upper hand for favorability when it came to economic policy, even through what is right now a recession. It is classified a recession. We are going to be in a recession.
The stock market crashes every week.
Yeah, we're going to be in a recession for years. Yeah, because it's just bad. But even through this,
the econ major has spoken.
Yes. This is my ultimate analysis. Things are not looking good, but he still carried that momentum through. And it's not even with lower class. I think that if we look at this election, we see a lot of working class people were disenfranchised, but a lot more upper class people turned out of self-interest. I mean, you look at like the demographic breakdowns by income bracket, and you'll see households over $100,000 a year swung close to 60% for Donald Trump. Incredibly high turnout for Donald Trump in that income bracket. And the farther down you get, the more it swings towards Democrats and towards Biden, which I guess that sort of disproves the whole idea of economic anxiety and what that actually means.
Right, the myth. We talked about that on the last episode. It's not really true that all these like poor guys are chilling for the Republicans.
I should say economic anxiety, as described in a lot of media as the like, oh, I'm poor, immigrants will come in and make me poorer, doesn't exist. I think the economic anxiety we see is, oh, I have a lot of stuff. If Joe Biden becomes president, I'll have a little bit less stuff.
Yeah. Yes, that is real.
And that's the real economic anxiety that pushed Trump over the edge.
It's not poor whites, it's rich whites. It's the bourgeoisie, folks. Yeah. So, yeah, it's like you said, before this pandemic, there were more presents under the Christmas tree for not just black families, but a lot of other families. And whoever you want to give credit to that for, whether it's Obama or Trump, I don't really care. It doesn't matter because it's all gone now and it'll never come back because you know why. But how do you think Biden as a candidate is to blame? Because you said Trump was always ranked higher than him on the economy. So that means that, do you think that's really because Biden never had any economic plans? He never really made any policies. He didn't run on policies, did he?
Here's one thing that really points out where Joe Biden fell short. Joe Biden did not run a policy-oriented campaign.
Certainly not.
He ran a values one. And running against Trump, yeah, that looked like a good idea. You looked like you could win on that. But the thing with that is, you start to look at a lot of races where Joe Biden lost. I can't think of... What's the state? I can't think, but they voted a 15...
Florida.
Yeah, it was Florida. They had the $15 minimum wage. They voted that up. That
That
won
was a
as a
ballot
ballot
measure, yeah.
measure. Joe Biden lost in that state. Part of Joe Biden's platform is a $15 minimum wage. He didn't advertise that. He didn't speak to it. He didn't raise a lot of these economic issues that he had. I mean, half this stuff is probably just like thrown in there to try and like satiate some of us disgruntled Bernie supporters, which it worked to middling effect. Which he had these policies, but he did not campaign on them. He did not make it known that like, hey, I'm gonna raise the minimum wage, or like, hey, I'm gonna ban. What was the other thing? He said he was gonna ban like the limited pay for service industry for tipped jobs.
Oh, yeah, there you
He
go.
said he would end that. That's a great policy. A lot of people would benefit from that. People would really like that. Did he campaign on it? No, he didn't campaign on it. Same with Kamala Harris. And granted, he talked big game about his environmental policy. He didn't say anything specific. He just said, oh, we'll transition off. He didn't mention any real timelines. I think he said 2036 most of the time. That was the timeline he was aiming at. But it's such a nebulous idea of when he's doing things and what he's going to do that he didn't give people stuff to actually vote for beyond I'm not Donald Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And
And
that
I'm
can
going to
only
be
take...
really nice.
Exactly, and that can only take you so far.
Yeah.
Especially coming off of Trump's economic boom. Even though it cratered in the last moments, people still have all that left over.
Yeah, leftover money from that. Yeah, Joe Biden, and it's funny because if you watch Joe Biden going around and making the rounds and speaking at like unions or whatever, he's much better at playing class politics than Hillary Clinton was. You know,
He's almost better than Trump is.
yeah, to an extent, definitely. But it's all obviously that's all smoke and mirrors. He's full of crap. He does not represent the interest of working people. He's never done it in his 47-year-long career. He's a total bum, fraud, hack. You know, I voted for the man, so I can say all these things. Bum, fraud, hack. I'm making a new word. It spells exactly how it sounds. But, I mean, this really is, it just goes to show, you know, Democratic primary, you really had two options. You had this nice, feel-good, you know, I'm going to speak real easy unless you challenge me in any way, then I'm going to call you fat or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, Joe Biden course of action. Or you had Bernie Sanders who, you know, had, you know, everybody said Elizabeth Sacagawea Warren was the plan candidate. If you look at her page, there were no plans. You look at Bernie's page, there are pages of plans, man. He had it all figured out.
Yeah.
He was the guy to go to if you wanted a good policy that was going to put, you know, more money in the pockets of your average everyday citizen.
Yeah, granted, I think the criticism of Warren goes beyond. She did have some plans. I think she had probably something equivalent to Bernie, maybe a little less.
But they weren't specific. It was a misrepresentation to call her the plan candidate.
Yeah.
If Bernie wasn't running, she'd be the plan candidate.
Yes. I think, though, ultimately, when it comes down to it, Warren did have a plan. Biden still did not.
Yes.
Like, I'm
I'll agree
sitting
with
here
you
at this point as someone that did not support Warren during the primary. Like, we would have been better off with her as a candidate than Joe Biden simply because of the fact that her sort of rhetoric, her specific set of skills would have actually met the moment in a way that Joe Biden could not have.
Joe Biden ran on name recognition and being powerful and popular enough to beat Trump. And that's how he got the nomination. And you know, everybody turns to him in the general election to be like, "All right, Joe, we all voted for you because we hate that evil, you know, that Bernie Sanders makes my skin crawl." Mm-hmm. I don't know what it is about him. It's just the way he looks. I guess it's that giant.
Yeah, he raised his voice during the debate.
Yeah, I was alluding to the anti-Semitism about him.
I thought you were talking about the.
No, they just didn't like him because he's Jewish. Like,
I didn't realize.
I am starting to believe that more and more.
That
a lot of people didn't like him because, well, they would always say, "I just don't like his." You know, nobody actually said this, but you know, people would say like, "Oh yeah, I just can't stand his giant nose." You know, they would get anti-Semitism was definitely a thing there. I'm convinced of it. But you know, so they did it. They stopped him, and. It's funny, I saw a tweet that was like, the only big loser tonight is Mike Bloomberg. And in the back of my head, I was like, Mike Bloomberg's not a loser. He got exactly what he wanted. He got Bernie to not be the Democratic Party nominee. That everybody's talking about Bloomberg's role in this election. That was what it was. Like it's like
Yeah, the winners tonight are Howard Schultz, Michael Bloomberg, and anyone that wanted to make sure the Democrats did not vote for Bernie Sanders.
Yes.
And I guess while we're on the topic of moderate Democrats and appealing to the right, I think that my favorite statistic from all of this, and I know we've been throwing a lot of numbers out there, but this one has to do with our good friends, the Lincoln Project. If you look at Republican voters, this is like registered Republicans, in 2016, 90% of them voted for Donald Trump. In 2020, 93% of them voted for Donald Trump.
Ha 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 ha.
Yeah.
Ha. Yeah.
So
all the people that voted for Joe Biden because he'll swing the moderate Republicans, like.
Yeah, compared to Hillary Clinton, Joe Biden lost Republican support. He lost moderate support, and that's with endorsements from John Kasich, from the guy who poisoned Flint. I can't think of his name. The governor.
Rick Snyder.
Rick Snyder, yeah, the guy who poisoned.
The guy who
Flint.
massacred a city. And speaking of people who massacre, John McCain's wife, another famous Republican who.
$100 million into the Lincoln Project Political Action Committee for them to run ads. And basically they ran ads in blue states to make people feel good, like, hey, the Republicans are on our side. They did not do jack shit for this election.
Oh, yeah.
They did not swing a single voter.
I didn't know that. Were all there, ads in California and stuff?
Yeah, it was all New York, California. I think they ran some in Pennsylvania. The places where they got attention were not Republican areas. They got attention in liberal areas where we wanted to pat ourselves on the back and say, hey, they're actually on our side.
Yeah.
And now those are going to be the guys running the Trump administration if they don't all disappear into the night. Or running the Biden administration.
Yes. Yes. What do you, yes, I think we should get to that. We should close the episode off with that, I think would be a good. Well, we talked about the Lincoln Project a few weeks ago. There are a bunch of former consultants for the Bush crime family.
Yeah.
Who made electing Biden their priority, and
no, they made making money their priority.
Yes, of course, you're right.
Electing Biden was their way to do it.
Yes, you're right. So they only ran ads in areas that Biden was gonna win in. That's you're right, to make liberals feel better, and that's sort of what I thought Nate Silver's job was to do, because he in 2012 his role was to make liberals feel better, because Mitt Romney has no chance. That's all this is. All of our culture and media sort of exists to reinforce the beliefs of coastal elites, of rich liberals. That Simpsons episode that aired a few weeks ago where they were making fun of Bernie. They said that Bernie was a baby who has thugs beat people up. Because that's what the conception is by Bernie of liberals. Liberals think he's this really mean Twitter bully, and he has this army of vicious thugs that go around harassing people.
He's just this nice old man. He wants to give us health care.
Yes, everybody that...
Some of us just get a little too into it.
I will not apologize for getting too into it.
You won't apologize for getting blocked on Twitter by lots of people.
I'm racking them and stacking them. But all of the media that exists does so to reinforce the everything from all the TV shows, SNL. What's going to happen with SNL now? I don't even want to think about it. We got to watch Saturday Night. We should do that. We should watch SNL and see what their post-election takes are.
Yeah, I just can watch that. But returning to the Lincoln Project, I just think it's so insane the amount of money these people had. And everyone was sold on this idea, you know what? This is 200 years of combined Republican, insider experience. These are the guys that did the dirty ad campaigns. These are the fixers for the Republican Party. And they're on our side now. They're going to take down Donald Trump from the inside. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. They had a negative effect.
Yes.
They lost Republicans in this election. Joe Biden lost Republicans. He lost voters from that demographic he was aiming for. That's insane. That is absolutely insane.
They got $100 million from rich liberals donating.
Collected over just everything.
Yeah, it was a PAC, so.
Yeah.
You want to talk about setting money on fire, Jack? Is that what you want to do for the... Okay, then let's fucking talk about the Senate.
All right. Well, let's start with Kentucky, the big one. Get
Oh,
Mitch or die trying.
yeah, here we go with the whole Mitch McConnell thing. Mitch
So,
McConnell, do you really like? First of all, it's so insane to think that you ever had a chance
yeah, in
with
Kentucky.
with the Not even about Kentucky. Mitch McConnell is the reason everything exists right now. Like Mitch McConnell is the most politically the most important politician from this era, hands down.
Yeah,
He totally kneecapped the Obama administration, like once he became majority leader,
absolutely.
destroyed it. Obama was president for 6 years, really. The last 2 years of his service of his term
Yeah.
were totally run by Mitch McConnell. Mitch McConnell ate Barack's lunch.
Yeah, Mitch McConnell is the 21st century, like, Machiavelli. He is the most important person in politics in the last several decades.
So the Republicans were not going to let him be in danger. Even if our guy, Charles Booker, won. If Charles Booker won, I would have maybe thrown like $5 to his campaign
Yeah.
just to get Mitch out. Because Mitch McConnell, don't get me wrong, I hate him. I admire him, but I truly hate him.
Yeah. And how much did Amy McGrath spend? How much did her campaign spend?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I do know this. They were running ads in Ohio at one point.
$85 million. The
There
McGrath
you go.
campaign had $85 million. Now, do you know what the margins were for Mitch McConnell? Do you know what percentage he won by?
I think it was like 35.
I think it was closer to 20, but he won.
Okay.
He won beyond double digits.
It was a landslide.
It was an absolute landslide.
For all intents and purposes, it was a landslide.
Now, I know people always made fun of it back in 2018, Beto's war chest. Like, Beto O'Rourke marauding around Texas. He had what? He had like $75 million. He had so much money. Beto had all of the money. He had enough money to start a presidential campaign that had like middling success before he like fizzled out. That's pretty impressive. He came within 2% of Ted Cruz. That is a race well run. I'd give it to Beto. He came close in Texas, closer than anyone's come in a while.
Yeah.
Amy McGrath came nowhere close.
No.
Kentucky was never up for grabs. Texas has the same demographics as California. The only difference is like voter suppression.
Mm-hmm.
Kentucky, again, it's a diverse state plus voter suppression, but it's not institutionalized it's institutionalized in Kentucky the way it hasn't been in Texas. Like, Kentucky, I would not be surprised if we never saw Kentucky go Democrat in our lifetime.
You think so?
Yes.
Yeah, that makes sense. I believe that. Yeah. So that was a waste. You want to talk about more waste? Let's move east a little bit into South Carolina. Now this one actually makes me sad. The McGrath thing just makes me laugh. That's funny.
Yeah.
That's stupid that you said.
I also want to say about McGrath, she was a Trump Democrat. She's a
she
Democrat
sucked.
that openly said she voted for Trump in 2016. Like, she would have voted for Kavanaugh.
She was
the whole 9 yards.
She was campaigning on saying McConnell was doing a bad job of helping Trump.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, screw off, Amy McGrath. I hate you. Yeah, but this is a race that Jamie Harrison, not a great guy. I don't want to see him at my wedding. I wouldn't let him marry my daughter. But
yeah,
Lindsey Graham really sucks.
He has a certain charm to him.
Sure.
I think he's a decent person, very decent like politician. As far as Democrats go, he's not like far left. He's not a Bernie progressive, but he's actually farther to the left than probably Senate Minority Leader Schumer.
Sure. Well, yeah, yeah. My cat is. Yeah. But anyway, that's a race I would have liked to see go because I wanted Lindsey Graham to lose. Yeah. And my big problem with that is, by the end of it, they were saying it was a close race. They're saying it was neck and neck. Mm-hmm. South Carolina became competitive. And so I was thinking, well, there you go. We'll probably pick up a seat. I mean, nobody likes Lindsey Graham.
Yeah.
He alienates a lot of conservatives because he said all those mean things about Trump in 2016.
Yeah.
I like our shots here.
Yeah, biggest fundraising quarter of any politician ever. He had Lindsey Graham in interviews basically on the verge of tears saying, come on, guys, I need you to donate money to me or I will lose.
Yep, and Lindsey Graham won in a landslide. Yeah, it wasn't even close. It was another double-digit lead. It was ridiculous.
It wasn't as bad as McGrath, but it was still bad. Yeah, and so that puts us at almost $200 million so far Now, let's move on to the next Senate race.
Do you want to go north? Do you want to go to our great state of Maine?
Yeah, I was gonna go to Maine
Yep.
next.
Suzanne Collins. She's hated by Republicans because she says mean things about the president. She's hated by Democrats because she votes with Trump all the time. She voted for all of the Supreme Court justices. She's always says she won't, and then she does. Okay, I actually don't know how the Republicans won this one. I don't understand it because Biden won all 4 electoral votes in Maine. They do that, or Biden won it. Biden won all 4 electoral votes in Maine. They do that
Yeah.
splitting thing.
Yeah.
How did Suzanne Collins? I don't understand.
I have
Everybody
no
hates
idea.
her. She's
Sarah-
got to be the most hated person in politics.
Yeah, Sarah Gideon had a great shot. People were calling that like a safe Democratic Senate seat. Susan Collins, when she voted for Kavanaugh, right? She voted for Kavanaugh.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think. Yeah, when she voted for Kavanaugh, they started a political action committee the day after that happened, and overnight it had upwards of $2 million in it without a candidate named for whoever is going to challenge Susan Collins. Now, Sarah Gideon picks up, and I haven't really looked that much at this race yet because I've been paying more attention to the presidential election, so I don't know exactly what went wrong. Sarah Gideon's campaign had over $70 million.
All of it from out of state.
Most of it from out of state, yeah. $70 million to beat arguably one of the most hated senators in the United States, and she didn't win.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You know, guys, it's insane. That should be like again. Suzanne Collins, I would bet, is the most unpopular.
And the
I would
list,
wager that.
the list goes on. You then look at North Carolina. You look at Iowa. Of course,
Iowa, the incumbent Republican didn't even know how much soybeans cost, and she still won.
yeah. I do give it to Democrats. Arizona, they flipped Arizona. That's impressive.
It's not well.
I said it in like March and April. Arizona's going to get flipped. People looked at me like I was crazy.
I didn't because the guy's a space
Well,
guy.
yeah, because
He
you
went to
understand. You're a smart politics guy.
Yeah.
You know what's going to happen before it happens. But I said that. People thought I was crazy. I said, no, Mark Kelly actually looks like he's going to have a shot. They could flip it for Biden or for the Democrat or whatever. And they did. By a good margin. Same with, what's the other one they flipped?
Colorado.
Yeah, Colorado. That's the other one. Everyone thought Colorado was going to flip, though.
Yeah,
Gardner
yeah.
never stood a chance.
And as far as seats the Democrats lost, no one thought that Alabama guy was Doug Jones. He beat the pedophile by this much. I'm doing the close fingers thing if you can't see me.
Yeah, like by the narrowest of margin, but he could not beat the football man.
No. Football man good, Democrat bad. So yeah, we saw that coming.
Yeah, but then
but
of these other states, it gets back to our polling issue. They were calling these early, saying, wow, it's going to be a blowout. It's going to be a landslide. I don't know what that did for campaigns. Yeah, no, they got destroyed, and it was embarrassing. And actually, one thing I want to attribute it to is this, and like the presidential election and the Biden campaign. Biden wasn't really out doing much. He had a lot of people making calls for him, and he did events here and there, but he wasn't having people knock doors. And I know this isn't a time to knock doors, but Trump had people out there. Trump had people knocking doors, making calls, doing the whole
Voter
deal.
outreach.
Massive events, voter outreach, the whole deal. And this is where I think people get it wrong about Bernie's appeal. People are saying, oh, people won't vote for Bernie. He's a socialist. He's doing all that. Bernie had substantial grassroots infrastructure. Coming out of the primary, he had one of the largest apparatuses of actual grassroots, be it DSA, be it left progressive, be it anything, an actual
be it communist
voter reach out apparatus that was absolutely jazzed to have him running, and they were going to go knock doors for him. Biden never had that. Biden, I don't want to say coasted on name recognition, but that's what got him elected. Not necessarily his outreach, not really his campaign. People just knew him, and he was comfortable, so they voted for him. And of course, that's how primaries work, and he did win the primary ultimately, mostly because other candidates dropped out, but I don't want to get into that. But he won the primary, but he did not have this on-the-ground outreach program that Bernie did. And who does he pick up as VP? Kamala Harris. The one whose actual campaign imploded She didn't have offices anywhere. She had like
She
got
dropped out
shut down in the first couple of months.
She dropped out before Iowa. If you drop out before
No one-
Iowa, you're a loser.
Yeah,
You're the
no one
biggest
cast a
loser.
single vote for her. At that point, it would have made even more sense for him to pick up Warren, because even though Warren didn't have a lot of supporters, she actually had infrastructure.
She had campaign
she had
offices.
Something. She
Yeah.
had offices. Biden did not. Biden didn't have this sort of like apparatus to actually get people to vote, get people to know him, get people to like propel the campaign forward to the presidency. And that's what Bernie did have. I know people have been like beating this dead horse for a while. Bernie would have won. Bernie would have won by a landslide. That is the official pod position. Bernie would have had no trouble winning this election. Bernie would have had no trouble winning the 2016 election.
Bernie would have won the election on election night.
Yes.
Like, the mail-in ballots, we wouldn't need to wait for mail-in ballots. Like, PA would be blue on election night.
Exactly. People are saying, oh, Biden defeated fascism. Liberalism does not defeat fascism. You cannot beat a fascist with a liberal. Liberals join fascism. Liberals absorb fascism.
Prick
They
a
do
liberal
not
and a
defeat
fascist
it.
bleeds.
And that's why Biden will be absolutely impotent in the next 4 years with a like neo-fascist, crypto-fascist, whatever you want to call them, Republican Party running the Senate, shutting down everything he tries to do. He will not get anything done. He will try and appeal to the right. He'll move farther to the right, farther to the right. He'll try and get something done. He'll basically concede everything to Mitch McConnell. And we will make progress through executive orders and maybe some better foreign policy. But actual substantive policy, actual substantive legislation will not occur unless the Democrats get the Senate, which is not looking like they will do.
Yes. Okay. So yes. Let's talk about that. Man, it's so funny. Biden refused to ban fracking because he didn't want to lose Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
I just remembered that. I thought I'd point that out. That's really hilarious. But yeah, so Biden won't do anything for 4 years because he's completely cucked by the Senate. Mitch McConnell's not going to suddenly have a change of heart. You know, he's going to do what he did to Merrick Garland, but on every piece of legislation for 4 years, because he knows if they do nothing, Biden or Kamala, whoever's nominated in 2024, I don't really think it's going to be Biden. It's probably going to be Kamala.
Yeah.
Are going to get cremated by whatever insane, like the CEO of My Pillow, when the Republicans nominate them. And Biden as a candidate was all bad for all those other problems, but he did not get out the vote for the down ballot races.
No.
He didn't get the Senate. The House lost seats. I blame Nancy Pelosi for that. Because Nancy Pelosi also sucks.
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer I want to call a vote of no confidence. I think it's time to overturn some of the Senate and House leadership. Let a new generation in.
Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer have done more to kneecap their own party than Republicans could dream of. Democrats suck. That should be your takeaway from this election. And if you're an LGBT person, if you're a black person, or any type of minority who is up on election night sweating and crying because it looked like Trump was going to win or whatever, the Democratic Party did that to you. It's because they failed you on every possible conceivable level. You do not owe them your vote from this point going forward. You probably shouldn't vote for them if they're going to continue to suck like this. Joe Biden's talking about naming Republicans to cabinet positions.
Yeah.
And I thought we were all voted because we hated the Republicans and we wanted, they were Trump's enablers. They were enabling a fascist for 4 years, and now suddenly we want them being Secretary of State. Mm-hmm. Make this make sense.
Yeah, the whole idea of Biden as a progressive, I'm not even going to call him left-wing because he's never even pretended to be left-wing, but Biden as a progressive, this is a change that's come out of like the last 2 years, 3 years maybe. If you think of the Obama ticket, Biden was meant to moderate that, like keep it even-keeled, moderate ticket, sort of appoint the old Delaware senator on the ticket, make sure everybody knows, oh, this is legit. It's not a radical, like left socialist anything. And here we are thinking that, oh, he's actually going to be the like progressive change we need. Joe Biden was never going to be anything farther to the left than like the Democratic Party as like an institution. Depicting him as such is that's just false. You can't make him look like.
Yeah. And I think Biden the man matters less and less, because if there's anything this election showed you is that he's not all there.
Yeah.
And people are going to call me ableist or whatever for pointing this out, but he's not all there. That's the nicest way I can put it. I don't think he has Alzheimer's. I don't think he's dead and has been like some sort of fake. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but you'd be insane to think that like, you know, he's not. People keep saying he's going to make all these FDR style changes. He is fourth term FDR. He is FDR when FDR is half dead from polio. He is. I'm sorry. That's mean. I don't.
Yeah. Although I think.
But anyway, the point. I'm sorry. I don't. I just. My point with all that is he's not running the show. Mm-hmm. Nothing he or even Trump said in the debates or whatever mattered, because all it did was prove that they are not running the show. They are not all there. They don't know what room they're in.
Mm-hmm. I want to sort of go back, or not really that far, but say Biden the man only matters up to election night. From this point on, it's policy. It's all policy. Everything that matters is policy. And that's the sort of disjoint that the Biden campaign really failed on. Is everything he campaigned on was, oh, I'm Scranton Joe. Look at me. I'm decent. I'm a decent American. And they didn't have that sort of policy backing. Well, here we are, 2 days after Election Day, and who Joe Biden is, Joe Biden's character no longer matters. We can no longer hold a referendum on Joe Biden the man and what he stands for as a person.
I'm sure he's really nice.
It's just policy. That's all that matters at this point. And I think we're setting ourselves up to be let down by 4 years of gridlock and nothing getting done, and like Rahm Emanuel in the White House calling the shots again, and just corporatist neoliberal.
Yeah, let's use the A word, austerity. It's going to be 4 years of austerity.
It's going to be austerity.
That's going to be
budget hawks, deficits. We're going to be hearing about that for the next 4 years from not even just the right, like the Tea Party guys. That's going to start coming a thing in the Democratic Party again, where it's budget this, deficit that. The U.S. debt doesn't exist. It's not real. That's my official stance on the matter. You can say that as the podcast stance. The U.S. debt does not exist. It's not real. It's intangible. It cannot hurt you.
You can't be speaking on behalf of the podcast if I can't do it.
Okay. Do you not hold this position?
If I can't be saying Bashar will prevail on the podcast, then you can't be saying whatever economy mumbo jumbo. Anyway, yes, austerity is going to become the norm. Like you said, Senate Democrats are going to be caring about the budget for some reason. They're going to be saying, Mr. Biden, we're so glad he won, but we can't pass this. Anything.
Yeah, will a public option actually bring back the money that we're putting out there?
Exactly, yeah. I'm starting to think that a public option won't even happen.
Can't possibly raise taxes.
We just can't afford to raise taxes right now. And their response to the economy, well, and partly, even if Biden wants to do something nice, he can't, because he doesn't have the Senate and he doesn't have the Supreme Court. So, you're right, none of this actually matters. But, again, like, their response to this pandemic, their recovery, we're not going to get a second stimulus. What do you think? Second stimulus? Not going to happen, right?
No, it's going to be the continuation of like the trend of shock therapy. It's Milton Friedman's whole idea of like, oh, it's a crisis, cut the safety net, cut everything, regulation gone, everything. Just keep it lean government, let the market sort it out. While that's happening, people die, but trust me, it'll be fine in 10 years.
It's like, what did New York Andrew Cuomo do about the freaking... He cut the Medicare during the friggin' pandemic.
Yes,
what the frick, Carmella?
He did cut Medicare.
And
expansion,
Medicaid.
the Medicare,
Yeah.
Medicaid expansion during the early days of the pandemic. It's that is the one. Not even no, it's not even one thing. There's a lot of things I'm worried about.
Yeah.
But that is austerity is going to be something that we are going to have to see for the next couple of years.
All you people who came out as Cuomo-sexuals during the pandemic, during like April, get ready to get fucked then, you horny bastards. Get ready for it.
Yeah. I should say at this point, we may have not hyped up Joe during the election. We may have.
Whoa, so don't say we.
No, I'm saying both of us, we were not that hard on Joe over the last couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Leading up to the election.
So this sounds too different.
We were not that hard on Joe Biden. Coming up on the election, we recognize that, yes, he is better than Donald Trump. But now we are turning a corner, and I think it's really important to note this. We have turned the corner where it looks like Joe Biden is going to be president. We hold fundamental disagreements with how he is planning on governing, how he has governed in the past, and what sort of the next 4 years are going to look like. And we don't say this out of complete like disdain for him. We wanted him to ultimately prevail over Donald Trump. I think that's honestly a better conclusion. But we want to hold power accountable. We want to actually speak what we think about these policies, and I know it is kind of alienating from like what we've said in the past where we haven't really touched on like our disagreements or what we don't like about Joe Biden. But at this very point, it's looking like Joe Biden will be the one in power and the one that is deserving of criticism in a lot of areas. And it's not set in stone yet, but us talking shit about Joe Biden on a podcast isn't going to hurt his electoral chances.
No, yeah. Yeah, and now that the election is coming to its conclusion, the conclusion that we predicted, not to toot our own horns, this podcast, I think it's time to start making some changes. People have been telling us that it's too dated, that we talk about week's current events, and it has no replayability.
Yeah.
So we had to talk about the election a lot. We're two political junkies here.
Yeah.
And so we had to, cream our jeans about polls, even though we don't believe they're real. Now that it's over, it's time. This podcast is doing well. We're finally on Apple Podcasts now, so you don't have to download the Podbean app to listen.
Yep. Feel free to check us out on Apple Podcasts. Just type The Tempest in. You might have to scroll a little ways to find us. We're like the fourth result.
We're like the third or fourth result, baby.
Yeah, but you will find us now on Apple Podcasts, so if you're listening to us on Podbean, we recommend checking there if it's more convenient for you.
It is. It's a lot better. It's a lot cooler. Yeah. Subscribe. There's a subscribe button on Apple Podcasts, and we'd really appreciate it if you guys would subscribe.
Yeah, and also rate 5 stars. Boost our numbers.
I gotta give us a rating real quick.
Yeah.
Give us a rating. Let's take us to the moon, baby, and we will bring you so much joy.
Again, feel free to comment on there. Tell us on Twitter what you want to hear about. I mean, we got a lot of really great responses to our episode about neoconservatism, so we're thinking of doing a lot more retrospective, sort of look back on politics, philosophy, history.
Oh yeah, talk about our own political ideologies, why we don't like Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton.
Yeah, now that we've essentially been freed from the shackles of the election, we're hoping to change things up a bit.
Yeah,
offer a little more
history,
interesting analysis.
Talk about books and films.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that's a good point to wrap up.
Yep.
As always, follow us on Twitter at PodSaveYourSoul.
And that's all for tonight. Stay safe out there.
Yeah, have a beautiful time.